something called similar polygons today. And so similar figures have the same shape but are not the same size. So if you look at these two houses, they're obviously the exact same with the exception of one is small and one is big. So they would be considered similar. Okay, but the difference is we've already learned about congruent figures. So we did a lot of like proofs with congruent triangles. Congruent figures have the same shape and the same size. So if you look at these houses, they're congruent. They're the exact same house because they're the same size and the same shape. For two shapes to be similar, the following things have to happen. Their corresponding angles have to be congruent, and their corresponding sides have to be proportional. So this right here is called a similarity statement. When you read it, you say ABCD is similar to HIJK. So this right here means similar. The corresponding angles we just said would be congruent. So A and H are both listed first. They would be congruent to each other. B and I would be congruent to each other. Oops, sorry. C and J would be congruent to each other. And then lastly, K and D would be congruent to each other. So that is the first requirement for similarity. The second requirement we said is corresponding sides are proportional. So what I mean by that, hopefully by looking at this, you can see that A, B, and H, I are corresponding. If I make a ratio with those, I get 3/6, and 3/6 is really 1/2. If I continue doing that with all the corresponding sides, so then the next set would be 3.5/7. If you simplify, you're going to get 1/2. The next one is 5/10. If you simplify, you get 1/2. Oh, this is not correct. Okay, this is a 4. We're going to make this a 4. The last one is 2/4, which would be 1/2. And so since these are all proportional, because I cheated and I made them all proportional, that would make them similar to each other. So if two shapes are congruent, everything has to match up perfectly. So right here, you should already know this symbol, but this means congruent. So ABCD is congruent to HIJK. That means that these two sides need to be congruent. They are. These sides need to be congruent. They are. And the same happens all the way around. It also means the angles are congruent. So A is congruent to H, just like last time, all the way around this entire shape. We already should be pretty good at congruence because we spent so much time on it, but just in case, triangle MNP is similar to triangle SRT. It says, what are the pairs of congruent angles? So if it helps you to have a picture, you're always welcome to sketch one. You definitely don't have to, though. So here would be like MNP. Here would be SRT. What are the pairs of congruent angles? Last time I just used the similarity statement. So if M and S are in the same spot, those two would be congruent to each other. N and R correspond, so they would be congruent to each other. And lastly, P and T correspond, so they would be congruent to each other. So you can just use the similarity statement if you like that, or if you like to draw a picture, you could always draw a picture. This might be something new that you haven't heard before, but what is the extended proportion for the ratios of the corresponding sides? What that means is, if I look at this side, MN, hopefully you could see that it would correspond to SR. So I'm just going to write that. So MN over SR. Okay, that would be our first ratio. That would equal, and then you just do it again. So if I do NP, that would correspond to RT. And then the last one, PMTS. And so this is just considered an extended proportion. Basically, we're doing exactly what I did last time where I was taking like 2/4, except I'm just writing it with letters instead of numbers. All right, so then this is really what we do with this stuff. So it says, are the polygons similar, congruent, or neither? And then I'll read the rest once we get this figured out. So it's easiest to start by checking, do the angles match up? So if I kind of go through, I've got 2 marks here and 2 marks here, 90, 90, 3, 3, 1, 1. So those match up. The angles are congruent. I'm just going to write that up here. Okay, just quickly looking at the sides, I can already tell these shapes aren't congruent. Hopefully you could see that. So the next thing I would want to check is, are they proportional? So I'm going to start by picking out some corresponding ones. So hopefully you could see that these two correspond to each other. 6/6 is 1. So I want to go through and check all the other sides. Do they come out to be 1? So then the second one would be 12/6. Okay, not the same, right? So when they're not the same, you're all done because they're not similar and they're not congruent. So we're just going to say neither. Again, that's because I got 1 and then I got 2, so they're not proportional. Okay, example 3. We're doing the exact same thing. So I would always start with the angles. Now, they don't have to be facing the same direction. So like here, I'm going to do it a little differently. I have 3 marks, 3 marks, 2 marks, 2 marks, 1 mark, 1 mark. So they do match up. They're just not facing the same direction. So when you go to figure out your corresponding sides this time, you're really going to have to pay attention. Quickly looking at these, the sides are not congruent. So they're not congruent for sure. So I'm just going to go ahead and cross this off. Next, I want to see, are they similar? And again, similar means, do they have proportional sides? So I'm going to start with this one right here. So it's the blue and yellow angles. So I'm going to put 8 on top. If I look over here, the blue and yellow would be 10. 8/10 is really 4/5. And so I want to check, are all of the other ones going to come out to be 4/5? One thing I do want to mention, it doesn't matter which number you're putting on top or bottom, you just have to stay consistent. So I started with the smaller number on top and the bigger on bottom. So I just need to continue that pattern. So I'm going to do this side next. So the red, blue. So I'm going to put 12 on top, and then this is the other red, blue. So 15 on the bottom, and that does simplify to be 4/5. The last one, I have 16 and 20, and that's also 4/5. So because each of these end up being 4/5, that means that these shapes are similar. And then we want to write a similarity statement. So kind of like when we wrote congruency statements, I can name the first triangle however I want. So I'm going to just call it ABC. So triangle ABC is similar to. A was blue, B was red, C is yellow. So I need to follow the pattern. So the second one would need to be DEF. Okay. So here's another one. It says, are they similar, congruent, neither? If so, write a similarity statement. I'm going to say that we have no idea because if you try to check the angles, there is nothing marked. So you have no if the angles are congruent or not. So we're going to go ahead and then this last one. So this last one's going to kind of combine what you did yesterday with what we did today. So it tells you right away, these two items are similar. A, B, C, D is similar to E, F, G, D. And then it says, what's the value of X and Y? So how you want to start this off, and if you're having a hard time seeing this, okay, here's your first shape in red, and then here's the second one in blue. So how you want to start this off is you want to look for a set of sides that is fully filled in. So can you see how right here I have ED and I have AD fully filled in? Okay, so I'm going to set up my proportion with that. So I have 6 and I have 9. They go together for sure. I'm going to start by finding X. So hopefully you can see how X corresponds to 7.5. So I'm just going to set up a proportion and solve it. So I know since they're similar, each side's ratio has to be 6/9. So I made that fraction. I knew that, so I just said, okay, I have 6/9, X and 7.5 correspond, and then we're going to solve this to figure out what X would be. So 6 times, sorry, I'm trying to get a calculator. 6 times 7.5 is 45. 9 times X is 9X. And when you divide, X equals 5. The process to find Y is the exact same idea. So I had this fully filled in 6/9. I'm going to use it again. When I look at Y, it corresponds with that 5. So then I'm going to put Y over 5. Again, it doesn't matter what number you put on the top or the bottom as long as you stay consistent. So if you notice on the top, I was always using the red shape. And on the bottom, I always put the blue. If yours was flipped upside down, that's totally fine. You just have to make sure across the top and across the bottom, you're staying consistent. Again, I'm going to cross multiply, so I get 30 equals 9y. I divide both sides by 9. And when I do that, I get 3.3 repeating. It is completely fine to get decimals, just don't round.